Hey, it's Maria here, and I don't know if you knew, but I went to Antarctica at the beginning of this year, which was super cool. And so I thought I would just share what it was like. So I went on a Navy ship um, as an Air Force photographer. I used to shoot everything for the whole Defence Force, really. I was not the only one. There were, there's many of us. But I got some super cool experiences doing that job. I left in April this year to go out on my own and do landscape photography, but I loved that job as an Air Force photographer. So I went to Antarctica on HMNZS Aotearoa, which is an awesome, pretty new ship that the New Zealand Navy has. Um, First, we went on a surprise trip to Tonga, which was very interesting, but that is another story. So when we got back from Tonga, we went to Littleton in Christchurch, loaded up with a whole lot of supplies to take to Antarctica. I'm trying to think what was in there. There were a couple of buildings to take to Scott Base, and there were other like scientific supplies and other stuff they needed down there. So we were heading to McMurdo because Scott Base, by the looks of it anyway, doesn't actually have somewhere that you can put a ship. So at McMurdo, they have an ice wharf, which they build every year. So they layer, what I'm told anyway, is they layer dirt and they put a layer of dirt, spray it down with water, that turns to ice, put another layer of dirt, and it's like a layering process. I would love to see them make it. Anyway, that's where we went to McMurdo, to the ice wharf, tied the ship up there, and Scott Base is actually like just over the hill from McMurdo, so not very far at all. So yes, we went from Littleton to Antarctica. I was worried about how rough the sea was going to be, yes. To be honest, I always wanted to fly to Antarctica. It was always my dream to go to Antarctica, but I wanted to fly there so I could skip the rough seas. But I am super glad that I did go on the ship because I think if you fly there, you just miss out on the most amazing things to see. So we got through all the rough seas, which actually wasn't as bad as I had expected. I think the ship handled it pretty well, to be honest. And then we started seeing our first icebergs. So I've got a picture for you here. This is one of the first icebergs we saw. I was really lucky because the captain got them to put a rib out for me, which is it's actually quite a large inflatable boat by inflatable boat standards, anyway. And I got to tell the drivers to take me wherever I wanted. Pretty much, I got to tell them where to go. So that was awesome. We drove around a few of these icebergs and took some cool photos. I took lots of photos with the ship, of course. Some of them which went to the media, and people thought that the ship had these massive icebergs the size of skyscrapers towering over it, but it was actually just because the ship was quite far away and the iceberg was close to me. But you can see here just how amazing the light was. It was this crazy, hazy, bluey, pinky orange light a lot of the time. And of course, it was light the whole time we were there because it was summertime and the sun does not set in the summertime. It gets close to the horizon around midnight, around then sometime. But it does not set. So I guess that's why you get some of these crazy colors. And these icebergs just looked amazing, just like they were glowing, like they were so bright white, and then those electric blue parts are just, I don't know, they seem like they are glowing as well. So it was pretty amazing coming across all these icebergs for the first time when I've never seen an iceberg before. It's just this massive piece of ice floating around in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, the first one was super exciting. Then we started to see a lot, and it was still exciting, but not as exciting as the first one. And I didn't get to go out in the boat for the rest of them either. But this photo was taken at the same time as the previous one, and I'm amazed at just how different it looks. The weather and the light just changes so fast down there. And this one has kind of like more of a stormy grey look to it with some rain clouds, and yeah, and the smooth, I love the smooth ocean in the foreground. I think that was kind of partly thanks to our boat, but yeah, it just looks amazing. Just the different kind of weather and light and sea conditions you get. So I'll go to the next one. Yeah, so it took 5 days to get there, I think, as I said. This is when we first got to the continent, to Antarctica. We first saw land, and there were all these little chunks of ice, I guess, floating around in the sea. And the light then was just so yellowy orange and crazy. It was so still as well. It's really hard to explain the feeling of being there. On our way in, there were, I don't know if you call them pods of penguins, but they looked like pods of dolphins kind of jumping out of the water and diving back in like dolphins would. And that was super cool. Obviously, it was super exciting when we finally saw land. I think this is taken not long after the previous photo. So we got to Cape Adare first, and this is where all these chunks of ice are. And after the 5 days at sea, we didn't go straight into McMurdo. We hung around for a while, went from Cape Adare to Terra Nova Bay, and our scientists did some experiments, and we tested the boat out the ship. We tested the ship's capabilities in the ice, because this is the first time the ship had been there to Antarctica. But yeah, just, I don't know, I'm going to keep going on about the light, but the light was just crazy amazing. Sometimes you just get this hazy, orangey, yellowy light, and it's just changing like all the time, different light conditions. This is when we finally got into McMurdo. Yes, it was very brown, not much snow at all. You can see the ship there alongside the ice wharf. And yeah, I am not gonna lie, I was kind of disappointed that there was no snow around. I had these visions my whole life of Antarctica being the white continent, and I get there and it's brown. It was actually really warm there too. I can't remember exactly what the temperature is, but it was not in the negatives, and a lot of the time I wasn't even wearing a jacket. It was that warm. But I did a few walks. I walked up that hill there, which is called Observation Hill. There's a beautiful view there over the ice shelf. And Scott Base is just over the other side of that hill there. There's a few other nice walks around. You can actually walk over to the ice shelf. I was lucky enough to get a skidoo ride across the ice shelf, which was amazing. And we also had a friendly driver who took us for a little tour around Scott Base and the ice shelf. So while I was there, I did get to go have a little look around. Well, didn't get to go into Scott Base because some people were isolating in there, and we weren't allowed to go in just because the flight had just arrived and they had to isolate. But we got to look in the Hillary hut, which was pretty cool. It's the first hut that Hillary stayed in when he did his expedition here. And yeah, when you get out to the ice shelf, you can see Mount Erebus and kind of some lower mountains around the place, but it's really just a whole lot of white. I guess what you'd expect if you were on a massive ice skating rink. So really, I liked the photos of the icebergs and the sea ice the best. We didn't get many days at McMurdo. We were there for 2 days, so we didn't have that much time to go and explore, and there were lots of things that I wanted to do. So I guess if I went there again, I would spend more time there and have more opportunity to take photos actually at Antarctica. This is on our way back. We spent a lot of time mooching around, I guess you'd say, or they were actually doing some work, some more testing of the ship and scientific experiments. And well, I don't know if you'd call them experiments, but it was more calculating temperatures and different things. Yeah, so we spent a bit more time around cruising around Antarctica before we actually went back to New Zealand. But this is a whole lot of sea ice or sea floats that we had to navigate through, and it was awesome watching the ship break through some of the stuff, and the noise was just so cool. It was like one of my favorite parts of the trip, just hearing the dong of the ship hitting and breaking these bits of big chunks of ice. They're quite thick too. I think they're like, these are probably, I don't know, at least 5 meters thick, and the actual ice shelf where the planes land is, I don't know, maybe like even a kilometer thick. I'm not exactly sure, but so thick. And there was, yeah, just some weird, cool, different chunks of ice floating around. This one to me looked kind of, like it was slushy snow almost, and looked really cool. Then we finally got to the edge of the Ross ice shelf, and that was amazing. Wow, everything was amazing, but this was super amazing because it was just this massive wall of ice as far as the eye could see. It stretched for miles and miles and miles, and this is where the icebergs break off from. And while we were there, actually, just before we got there, it was from the Tonga eruption, a huge chunk. I can't even remember how big it was, but it was like the size of a state in America, I think. Like, yeah, that big. It broke off and floated out to sea, and it was caused by the eruption. So that's the last of my photos. That was one of the last things we saw before we left. On the way back, the seas probably weren't as rough as on the way there, or maybe I just got used to it. We saw lots of icebergs again, but most of them were in the distance because the captain, I guess, wasn't going as close to them on the way back because we'd already seen a lot and we didn't need to go super close to see hundreds more icebergs. And obviously we didn't want to get too close to them because we didn't want to hit any of them either. So yeah, but it was a super awesome experience. Something that I had wanted to do since I was a little girl. Like, I remember when I was maybe like 8, doing a science project or some sort of project on Antarctica and making this paper mache Antarctica with mountains and things and putting little penguins on it, and yeah, that's one of the reasons why I joined the Air Force, is because I really wanted to go to Antarctica, because to me it is just such an untouched, uniquely amazing kind of place, with not just amazing, interesting, unusual like landscape, but also there's so many cool animals down there, which I would have liked to see more of. We did see a couple of Weddell seals. Actually, we saw a lot of them from a distance. I saw a couple of them close up. We saw some Gen 2 penguins, I think they were, because they were actually like nesting on the beach right near where the ship was. And I did see one emperor penguin from a distance. He was molting, so we weren't allowed to get too close to him, which was fair enough, because apparently they get very stressed when they're molting, and a lot of them die. They don't have a very high survival rate when they're molting. But yeah, I would love to go there and see more wildlife, and probably spend more time on the continent. But don't get me wrong, like the time I did spend there was amazing. But definitely just seeing the icebergs, the ice shelf, the sea ice, and even like the little penguins on the floating ice, all of that was probably my favorite part. So I would definitely recommend going to Antarctica on a ship. It is such an amazing experience, just seeing all the icebergs and ice and other things that you see on the way to Antarctica. And the light is just crazy amazing and just ever changing. As far as landscape photography goes, it is very challenging to create the shot that you want, because you don't have that much maneuverability, is probably the word. It's hard to get a photo that's different to someone taking a photo on an iPhone. So you really have to maybe use different lenses or use your Photoshop skills to get a different image to everyone else. I mean, you could use a telephoto, 600mm or something, and zoom in and get little details of the things that you see. But to be honest, sometimes it might just be a bit hazy for that as well, because sometimes it is very hazy in the sky there, as you could see in some of those photos. Yeah, but if you're going to go and take landscape photos, I would recommend doing some research on the photos people have taken, and taking a good selection of lenses, and yeah, just taking every opportunity to go and take photos, because as I said, the light is always changing so much. It's always different shapes of icebergs. We saw this amazing blue iceberg that had all these ridges down the side at one point, and that looked amazing. But still, like, I didn't think my photo looked that great of it, because I couldn't get the perspective on it that I wanted. I was right up on the bridge, and I didn't have enough time to like run down and get a lower perspective from lower down in the ship. But yeah, I still got some amazing photos, and I definitely want to go back again one day. It is one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I am so grateful that I get to check that off my bucket list. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below, and I am happy to answer them. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, before you go, I have a super cool quiz to find out what kind of landscape photographer you are. So click that link below, and answer a few questions and find out what kind of landscape photographer you are, because believe it or not, there are quite a few different kinds of landscape photographers. So go check that out right now.